Welcome back everyone to the video, and today we are going to be going over several rookies that I think are being either slept on or not talked about enough. Now we're going to start with the pretty obvious ones like round one guys like JJ McCarthy. So I know if you look on this video you're kind of like, why is he here? He's a first rounder. He was picked 10. I know. I'm just saying I think he is being a bit underrated. I have one more guy in round one to go over after this, and then it will be some guys in like round 2, 3, round 4 I think we have too. So it's about, I think, 5 or 6 players. I did try to make it pretty even as far as offense and defense. Before we get into though, I do want to say, just to be clear, these are not the only guys I see as being slept on or the guys I think are the most slept on. There are many other rookies that are really good options to do a video on. So if you guys want to see another part of this video, comment who you want on the list down below, or anything like that. Someone you guys think is being slept on, anything like that. But yeah, we're just gonna jump right into it. The fairly obvious one for round one is JJ McCarthy. I think as a prospect, this guy wasn't looked at as highly because of people like Drake May and Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. But I do think McCarthy's in a really good situation. I did a video on this probably about a month ago, and maybe he's not like the strongest prospect in the world, but sometimes the correct scheme fit can be all the difference for a quarterback. And I'm sure over the past 20, 30 years, there's a lot of quarterbacks that didn't pan out because they just really weren't in the right system. And I think McCarthy is in one that's actually going to really play into his strengths. And so like I've done in the past, I like to go down to the strengths and the weaknesses of the prospect for their NFL draft profile. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I am going to read just a few. If you guys want to read all of them, you can pause the video, do whatever you guys want there. Something I really love about JJ McCarthy, though, is plenty of experience working under center and pro-style passing schemes. Like I said, I think he really fits what the Vikings want to do with what Kevin O'Connell wants to do a lot in that Vikings offense. When you look at the way Kirk Cousins ran the offense and was able to distribute the ball to guys like Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, of course, before Kirk went down last year. But, even in the years, before that, Kirk did a very good job of, yeah, sure, he had one of the best receivers in football, but he still did a great job getting guys the ball like KJ Osborne and Brandon Powell, some guys that aren't the biggest names. And Kirk did a really good job of that. And I do think that McCarthy's in a situation now where not a ton is going to be asked of him that he's not already, I think, capable of doing. Because the team around him is so strong, he's not going to have to, go out there and really try and elevate everybody and put the team on his back. I don't think he really has to do that. He just has to play within the scheme and be smart and, get the ball to huge playmakers like Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson whenever he's healthy, probably about week 6 or 5, whatever that's supposed to be for him. But yeah, so I love that strength a lot for McCarthy. It's really one of my favorites they have on here. I do also think another big benefit is one of the draft's most efficient quarterbacks operating out of structure, because it does show that while I just talked about how good he is in a scheme fit, he's also not completely incompetent when it comes to playing out of structure as well, or potentially extending plays. I do think what kind of happens a lot for rookie quarterbacks in the NFL is whenever they try and extend plays like they did in college, the game speed's a little bit different. It doesn't work the same. Sometimes you extend plays and turn the ball over, fumble, get sacked, whatever it may be. But I like what McCarthy's strengths are because of other things like won't hesitate to slide and find new launch points when pressure builds. There's another one I was going to talk about too, which is makes drive throws between defenders with good decisiveness. Like, this is someone that is not just some terrible prospect that was reached on in round 1. Was he, worth pick 10? I don't know about that. But I think where the Vikings were with needing another quarterback, and I think of who they got here, because in my opinion, Drake May was the ideal pick for them. I think he would have fit very well still. I think he's the better talent than McCarthy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they, took a bad pick getting McCarthy, because I still think it fits the team very well. As for his weaknesses, though, I think some things just like leaves throws behind moving targets, allowing defenders to challenge catches, like it's got to be cleaned up. Obviously, that's one of the probably worst things you can do is to throw the ball behind someone where the defender is most likely at if the receiver has them beat. So obviously, that has to be worked on. But other things, I'm not too worried about stuff like deep balls need to come out quicker with more air under them. Cause I think those things, and even like sluggish getting through progressions and can get stuck on first read, those are things that can all get improved, with experience and with more reps. And I think the other benefit that McCarthy really has is the roster around him right now. Looking at this, first off, let's just talk about the quarterback position, because as of right now, McCarthy is the second guy, and I think this really actually benefits him because the Vikings have Sam Darnold in there, and I've got to see a lot of Sam Darnold over the years, being a Panthers fan. Whenever he was there, I watched, obviously a lot of Sam Darnold, and he's definitely, I think, I don't want to say overhated, but I don't think he's completely deserving of all the slander he gets. Is he a great quarterback? No, definitely not. But he does make decent plays. He's underrated as a runner. He's not someone I think you're going to like panic to have in there for a few weeks and just see what he can do. I mean, if this is a really good fit for Sam Darnold, then there's not really any pressure to throw McCarthy in there too soon. So I think that helps McCarthy out a lot. Anytime that he has to just be able to sit and learn, it can make all the difference for rookie quarterbacks. It really can. We've seen it with, Jordan Love, with Patrick Mahomes. It can really help out a ton. But if McCarthy does get in the game, which I think he definitely will at some point this year, someone like Aaron Jones, who's very good out of the backfield, receiving back, that's a huge help for him. But besides that, and to point out the obvious, Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and Brandon Powell and TJ Hawkinson, that is a pretty good room as far as weapons for a quarterback to have. I don't know how many more are ahead of that in the NFL, to be honest. When you have someone like Justin Jefferson, who is, a top 2 receiver in the NFL, I can't even put into words how helpful that is for a quarterback. And even someone like Jordan Addison, he was one of the touchdown leaders in the NFL last year as a rookie. That's someone that's also very capable of being a very, very good receiver, very reliable target. Brandon Powell is someone that, I don't think he's as good as KJ Osborne. I think Osborne was very underrated in his role in Minnesota. But I don't think you panic having Brandon Powell there as wide receiver 3 either. So I love this for McCarthy. I do think he could be slept on a little bit as far as the quarterbacks that are taken ahead of him. While they're all, phenomenal, I think they'll be good in the NFL as well. I do think McCarthy deserves a bit more, maybe not respect, but to maybe just keep an eye on him. Because the position that he's in, I would not be surprised if he surprises a lot of people and puts up some very decent numbers in year 1, assuming he gets a good sample size to actually play this year. And then to get the other first rounder out of the way that I have on here, I promise no more high picks after this. It is Laiatu Latu, who is someone that I wasn't expecting there to be so many offensive picks that early in the draft. I really, like a lot of people, thought the Falcons were going to go defensive, especially getting a defensive edge. And they didn't. So that's a little shocking to me, but I do want to highlight Laiatu Latu because, for one, this guy's a phenomenal player. 2, I think he went to a good landing spot. And 3, I think because of all the other very heavy offensive talent, might I add, before him, it kind of shadows some of those guys that got taken shortly after all that offensive talent on the defensive side of the ball. Because Latu, in my opinion, was deserving of going top 10 100%. So he's labeled as a boomer bust potential prospect. And once again, to read some of these strengths out, menacing portfolio of movement and entry angles in his rush, motor and strength to drive through redirect blocks once he finds an opening, times up bull rush to attack tackles, change of weight distribution in his slide. This is someone that is a very, very good athlete. I'm going to show his stats after this from college because I can't remember exactly what they were, but he had a lot of tackles for loss. I believe he had an interception. He had a forced fumble. He had a lot of sacks. This is someone that can just disrupt the game really in any way possible. He's, really able to do on the defensive line. I know some guys, you expect defensive tackle, they stop the run. Some edge rushers are known for sacks, but it's more like protecting the edge on the run. I think Laiatu Latu is someone that, and I want to be very clear here, I am not comparing him to this player, okay? I'm not saying on the same level. I'm not saying that's anything like that. But I do think someone like TJ Watt, that's a very, very good athlete who's, a very big factor, I think, in the run game, getting sacks. We see him get interceptions, make some unreal, interceptions where he jumps up at the line of scrimmage and times right, picks the ball off. Those are things that I don't think, Laiatu is going to come really and do immediately. But I think because he's this boomer bust potential, if he is boom, I guess, I think those are some traits that we're going to see kind of not carry over, but I think we're going to see similarities there because this guy is an amazing athlete. The big thing for me, really the only big thing for me, is medical concerns surrounding his neck injury while at Washington will need to be evaluated. I believe he was advised to actually retire because of this neck injury. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure he was. Then he ended up going to UCLA where they cleared him, and now he's playing still and got drafted. So that's something that, one wrong hit could just end his career immediately. I don't want to say that, but I think it is kind of a possibility with the extent of that injury. So that's something that's always very worrisome for a player, especially with an injury to the neck or the head. But yeah, that's I mean that's really what really scares me off the most from him, because other weaknesses, frame, build out, and body type are average. Like, that's not super concerning to me, because it's like, he's been that size, the past however many years, and he was still playing at a very high level. Will it maybe, hurt him, make him have to maybe work harder, or he's at some disadvantage? Sure, but I still think if he's an amazing player, an amazing athlete, and he can play efficiently, that's really all you can ask for. Legs straightened out during rush engagement, robbing him of leverage. That's something that I think can also be coached and developed and fixed. And plays with good power, but doesn't carry a firm anchor against the run. So again, I do think, for me, the biggest weakness is that injury. I think it definitely is scary, but it shows just how good of a player he is to be taken 15th overall. I believe one of the first defensive players off the board, if not the first, actually. Despite that injury, and despite all of the offensive talent going before him, he was still the first one off the board for the defense. And like I said, to briefly go over his stats here, he had 49 total tackles, 28 on his own. He also had 13 sacks to go along with that, and 2 forced fumbles. He also had a pick 6 and 2 total interceptions just in 2023 alone. So this is someone, like I said, that can really disrupt and wreck the game and do a little bit of everything on that defensive line. And so then going to the Colts depth chart right now, he's listed as the second string defensive end right now, behind Kwity Paye, who's, a pretty good player in his own right as well. But I still feel like I would be very surprised if Laiatu Latu does not get some sort of, I don't want to say like starting job for a huge portion of the year, but this guy's going to see the field. I really don't see a world where he doesn't. Colts GM, after they picked him, was like, we've got the best defensive guy in the whole draft. I think he has a case for that for sure. I wouldn't say he's the best defensive guy, but again, like, being able to land this guy after he kind of slid probably further than he would have if it was not so offensive heavy. He's a great player, and to be honest with you, I think the Colts defensive line is, I think, fairly average. I might be wrong in saying that, but I do think that this guy is going to be able to get minutes. I don't think anyone above him at defensive end or whatever is like going to be keeping him off the field to an extent where we don't get to see any of him. I think regardless of who's above him, like I said, Kwity Paye's a great player. Samson, I'm not going to try this. I'm just going to ruin the last name. I'm not going to bother saying it. But the guys above him, I really don't think will keep him off the field the entire season. I think he's going to see the field, and I think he's going to show just how athletic this guy really is. So, how good of a player is. Hopefully he can stay healthy, but this is something that I think is being overlooked a little bit, and the huge impact he can really have for the Colts defense this year. And then next, going to a second-round pick, is Ja'Lynn Polk. He's graded as 6.21, which equates to will eventually be average starter. And there's several reasons why I like this guy a lot, honestly. So, once again, for the strengths and the weaknesses, has an NFL body type that comes equipped with jump ball talent, possesses body control and ball skills to endure contested catches. Like, obviously, I love those traits about him, but a huge thing for me, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the depth chart probably than I did for, Laiatu Latu or JJ McCarthy. But I do want to go to the depth chart here pretty soon, because I think it's a huge benefit for Ja'Lynn Polk because of where he went. For weaknesses, though, formational release help won't be available in the league. Must prove he can play with better burst and suddenness. Below average salesmanship and burst at breakpoints. But I think the other thing is as well that the more these guys get to play, the more reps they get. I think it can always be developed. And for the Patriots, coaching is a big talk of this season, to be honest. Because when you go to the Patriots, depth chart as of right now, obviously they have a ton of new coaching in there. I think it's pretty much all new coaching, in fact. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they can do in year one. Because here's the thing, the Patriots, I did a video on Drake May. So if you guys want to see more about Drake May and the weapons that he really got from the draft, go check out that video. But for at least this video, I will say I'm going to be a bit more pessimistic than I was in the Drake May video. I don't see the Patriots winning a lot of games this year because, for one, there's a lot of young guys, a lot of inexperience from both coaching and, on the offense. But also, their schedule is honestly pretty tough. They're in a tough division, and some of their out-of-division opponents are honestly kind of difficult as well. But that aside, looking at this, I think Ja'Lynn Polk's in a good spot for several reasons. Number one, for quarterback, I trust Jacoby Brissett or Drake May to be able to get the ball somewhat efficiently to the wide receivers. I mean, Drake May, I think, is going to have some things working against him just because of how tough the schedule is. A lot of really good defense he's going to face. And he already technically regressed a little bit last season anyways. So, but, besides prospect talk like that, at the end of the day, he's a great quarterback, taken very highly, and him and Jacoby Brissett, I think, are both very capable of utilizing the weapons around them. Number two, the reason I like so much where Jalen Polk went is because, speaking of the weapons around him, I don't think there's anyone in this wide receiver room that is going to like lock in their spot as wide receiver one, like really at all. And it's not to like, kind of down any of these guys, but Kendrick Bourne, he's a great player. Demario Douglas is a great player, but I really see Jalen Polk as being more of an NFL wide receiver one. Kendrick Bourne's improved a lot, I will say. I think he's come to that ACL tear, so hopefully he's healthy by then. But I think it's going to be tough to keep Polk off the field because this is a big body receiver like we just talked about. And as far as the other weapons go, I think Polk can set himself apart. I don't see anyone above him that's going to be so much better and kind of, really absorb a lot of targets. I really think if he can establish himself as, just even an average player, a good player, he can become the wide receiver one probably by the end of the year. So maybe my expectations are a little bit too high, but I think that the reason this hasn't been talked about as much is because, Drake May was the big pick for the Patriots. And I think it's been overshadowed a little bit by, the Patriots, in my opinion, they had a sneaky good draft because I think one of the things that hurt Mac Jones so much was they didn't surround him with any talent whatsoever. Like, getting Juju does not count as surrounding your quarterback with elite level talent, or at least trying to draft new younger guys to put in there. But Drake May, they've proved to already try and prioritize that. You get Jalen Polk and Javon Baker in the same draft, trying to get young guys to be able to develop and grow and build chemistry with their young quarterback, young head coach. I like it. I think it's the start of a new era building in New England. I do not think it's all going to come together this year, but I do think Jalen Polk will establish himself as one of the cornerstones of this offense, and especially one of the better wide receivers in this team to actually build around. And then the next player I want to talk about is Tyler Nubin, who is a round 2 pick as well, who went to the Giants. And this guy's taken pretty high in the second round. The Giants needed help in the secondary, especially at safety after they lose Xavier McKinney to Green Bay in free agency. He's graded at 6.33, which is equivalent to will eventually be a plus starter. And I like Tyler Nubin for several reasons. So start with his strengths and his weaknesses. So first off, has the size, length, and instincts. Teams covert on the back end. Plays with predatory mentality from split safety and robber alignment. And also high-end ball tracker with ball skills to flip the field on the pro level. I really love that one a lot, to be honest, because the Giants, I don't want to say they've been bad at safety. I think Xavier McKinney's been one of their better players on defense, but they haven't had a lot of depth at safety. Other than Xavier McKinney, no one in that secondary exactly blew me away over the past few years. Tyler Nubin is actually the only prospect I'm going to say in this video that we're going to cover that's actually the starter on the depth chart as of right now. So this is someone that they really needed, that they trust, that they wanted to go get their guy and put him as a day one starter. And in my opinion, the things that he has as far as his strength and his weaknesses, and just to throw this out here again, I'm just using these as like a reference. I am not literally saying this is going to make or break the prospect, just so we're all clear on that, because I probably should have said that earlier. I've done this before in past videos where I've said that, so I forgot to say it today. But just to be clear, I'm not saying that because of this he's going to be good, because of that he's going to be bad. Like, it's just for a reference. Regardless, I do think he's going to be in a spot where I don't want to say he's going to have a lot of pressure on him, but I think he's actually going to maybe even benefit from the Giants' defense. We're going to talk about that in just a second, but operates with good field balance and discipline as a high safety. There's really a lot here that I really like about Tyler Nubin. I don't think he is someone that, like, I'm going to be shocked if, like, he doesn't play to my expectations, which might sound kind of bad, but I think that him already being in there and being the day one starter and have give a prospect, at least in my opinion, that he already is, I do expect him to be pretty good. And I don't think people are exactly fixating on him too much because, round 2 defensive back, there's a lot of round 2 defensive backs, whatever. Plus, Giants bring in Brian Burns. So they already have kind of bigger storylines out there. But I think this is someone that can really establish himself and set himself apart as a rookie in the Giants secondary this year. As far as weaknesses go, like, top end speed is just average to run down leaky targets. Like, that's obviously not ideal. Needs to drop down and fit run gaps a step sooner near the line. Pursuit angles run too steep, preventing leverage to the sideline. So again, I think there are things there that can be improved. But some just maybe things he might struggle with a little bit at the next level. But I still really honestly kind of like him as a day one starter for the Giants in the secondary. And so looking at the Giants are a really interesting team to me because the offense I am just not high on at all, apart from Malik Nabers, which I think is probably a lot of people's opinions. Even if you're high on the Giants offense or not, you do at least like Malik Nabers being there. But for the Giants defense, it's really interesting because I don't think their secondary is anything to really write home about, at least in my opinion. I think Deonte Banks is going to be very interesting going into year 2. He's someone to watch. But apart from that, the big talk is really this Giants defensive line. It's probably going to be one of the better defensive lines in football, in my opinion. When you have someone as unbelievable as Dexter Lawrence, like he's probably the best defensive line or best defensive tackle in football. One of the, I mean, he's got to be top 3 in my opinion. So you get someone like that, you bring in Brian Burns to where he can maybe absorb some of that attention that can maybe benefit, Kayvon Thibodeaux on the defensive line. So I feel like this defensive line is going to be operating, very well, very smoothly. I'm excited to see if Kayvon Thibodeaux can kind of step it up this season with, the addition of Brian Burns to maybe help him out a little bit. And the reason I'm bringing up the defensive line is because, a really good defensive line can also take pressure off the secondary. It forces the quarterback to get the ball out quicker before he gets sacked. It disrupts him. It does a lot. It really does. And I think we see that a lot with the Cowboys when you have a defensive line like that with DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons. They wreck the game. They make the quarterback uncomfortable, and a lot of times it forces not great throws. And then when they have a secondary as good as they have with Trevon Diggs and Deron Bland and Malik Hooker and stuff like that, they have playmakers there that are able to be there, to get the ball, to force turnovers once the ball is forced out quickly. I'm not saying I see that being the same for the Giants, but I do think we can see some similarities there. If the ball is forced out quicker to the secondary for me, no one really kind of, jumps off the page to me. But Tyler Nubin is where I want to kind of focus on that because, in my opinion, I think he could be the best secondary, the best defensive back in the Giants secondary this season, to be perfectly honest with you. And it's not disrespect to anybody else. I just think this guy's honestly a really good athlete who you can kind of do a little bit of everything with. And I think he's going to be a really big playmaker for him. So I don't know. Maybe I'm too high on Tyler Nubin. If I am, and if you think I am at least, comment that down below. But I like this fit a lot. I really do. I think he is able to really establish himself as a good starter. I don't think there's a lot of guys he can really learn from exactly, but I think he has the talent to be a day one starter and not be horrible. I think as the year goes on, we'll see him improve a lot. And I'm honestly excited to watch it. Now, our last offensive player for this video is actually going to be Devontae Walker. So we're jumping down to round 4 for him. He was graded as a 6.19, which is equivalent to a good backup with the potential to develop into a starter. And like other prospects, like I said before in this video, there are several reasons why I like Devontae Walker, especially his landing spot. So first off with the strengths, booming build-up speed to gobble up cushion and separate vertically, and career average of 30.7 yards on touchdown receptions. This is someone that can take the top off the defense. I will say, I believe he was ineligible for a large part of, I think it was either last season or the season before, because I think he transferred, and there was some weird thing with that. And then I think they ended up actually letting him play. So if you don't know much about this guy, you could look at him and you see his stats and you're like, why in the world? That is why. That's why it's a little skewed. But again, as a player, when he is on the field, this is someone that, like, again, when he didn't get a full season, but at least this year, I believe it was, or this past season, he's still taken round 4 and is still graded as potentially being a starter in the NFL. This is a really, really good player. Showed substantial improvement finishing contested catches. That's a big thing for me, especially in that Ravens offense. I think he can actually kind of set himself apart with that. Squares, pads, and bodies up cornerbacks on slants. As far as weaknesses go, route running features dull cuts and excessive drifting. Tends to wait on stop route throws rather than working back. I think that is a bit of an issue because Lamar is able to really extend plays. And I think, being able to do that and work back and help the quarterback is something that Ravens receivers are actually able to do very well because it gives Lamar a target to look at as he's scrambling. So that being a weakness isn't ideal, but I don't think it's going to keep him off the field or ruin him as a prospect or anything like that. Inconsistent tracking, adjusting to deep balls, is obviously not great. But again, if they're using this guy as far, like slants being one of his strengths, I'm not too worried about that. And even though, he's inconsistent tracking and adjusting to deep balls, he can always improve with that, and he's still averaged 30.7 yards on touchdown receptions. So, that's not to say he didn't catch a 2-yard pass and run for the rest of it, because I'm sure that was probably some of those numbers as well. But still, with numbers like that, I mean, it is still incredibly impressive. So then jumping over to the Ravens offense. Now, this is actually very similar to how I talked about Jalen Polk with the Patriots. Looking at Devontae Walker, he is currently the wide receiver 4 And in my opinion, I think Zay Flowers has his spot locked in. And that's really it. I think Rashad Bateman has a chance to bounce back and really have a solid year and establish himself again. He was pretty good in 2022 until he got hurt, and then he kind of fell off a little bit last year. So it's a big year for him to kind of, be back and healthy, put up good numbers. But I still wouldn't say he has his spot locked in. And I think Devontae Walker will get his chance to get on the field. Nelson Aguilar, is not, getting any younger. I don't think he's someone that, like, you want to, keep on the field as much as possible, whatever. I mean, give Devontae Walker some reps. I think this is someone that can be a deep threat. He can come down with contested catches, especially since he's already, improved on that over the past year. His deep ball tracking may not be the best, but still, in this offense, if he can learn to work back and work with the quarterback out of structure and get open for Lamar, I think he's going to be a great fit. That's the only thing to me that's not the best fit. But still, I mean, I don't think there's anyone really keeping him off the field. And with a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, I mean, you have one of the best in the league, a top 5 quarterback to play with as a rookie. I mean, that's a huge benefit. You look at Malik Neighbors. I mean, imagine if Malik Neighbors was on the Ravens. Like, it would be insane. He'd put up incredible numbers. Instead, he's got Daniel Jones. It's going to really bring down his potential. Devontae Walker, I think Lamar can get the best out of Devontae Walker. And I don't think that, and if Devontae Walker, if he's just better in a small role, I think that's still available too. I think he can still get in there for Nelson Aguilar, get a couple big plays, and maybe he's off the field. Maybe that's all you use him for. But regardless, I think that's still some meaningful minutes. And this is someone that may not be looked at as being a huge impact in year one. But I wouldn't be surprised if when this guy gets on the field, he makes some big plays down the field for the Ravens. I think he's very capable of doing it. I don't think there's anyone else on this team other than Zay Flowers that is going to do that a lot better than him. Assuming he can hit his potential, and because of his landing spot with Lamar Jackson, I think the quarterback can help bring that out of him. So I like Devontae Walker as a receiver to watch this year, just in case. And then the final player of the video, ending off on defense, making it 3 offensive players and 3 defensive players, is Kamari Lassiter. And he's raised a 6.22, which is equivalent to will eventually be an average starter. And I think Kamari, honestly, could have been taken a little bit higher than he was. I think he could have slipped into round 1. Instead, he goes down to round 2. A lot of round 2 guys this video, by the way. If you want to see me try and get guys more in like the round 4, round 5s, I can. But it is kind of tough doing that because it's like you're really taking shots in the dark. Like, not everyone's going to be a Puka Nacua. So you really got to kind of look for guys that aren't at the top of their round, but are in a good landing spot, and I think have the talent. That's at least how I approach this video. But if you guys want to see me target guys that were way back in the draft, I can try and do that, but it might not amount to anything if they, ultimately just don't get in the game, which is obviously very possible. As for Kamari, though, getting down to his strengths and weaknesses. First one is instincts and player condition took a step forward in 2023. Confident and pressed with footwork to mirror patterns from a side shuffle and quarters coverage. Uses hand fighting to disrupt receivers' rhythm getting downfield. That's a big thing for me, and I think that we've actually seen that a little bit. Obviously, there's not a lot of videos out from, minicamp and OTAs and stuff like that, but this guy was taking reps against Stephon Diggs, and I don't think the throw was great. I'm not sure who threw. I'm not sure if it was Stroud or just somebody else. But downfield, I think it was a little off target, but Kamari was, he was all over Diggs. He was really there, and Diggs is a good route runner at that. He's a, proven starter in the NFL, and I'm not going to say because of that one video, this guy's going to be great. I'm just saying, from what we've seen, it's not, I think, unrealistic to say this is someone that could potentially have a big impact in year 1 for this Texans secondary. I think another big thing is wired correctly for NFL run support duties. With DeMeco Ryans and the culture he's really helped bring to Houston, that defense was very good last year. It was very disruptive. It was very aggressive. And I think this is honestly just one of those kind of like just character picks. I think he fits what they want to do. It's from just a kind of energy standpoint. He's going to be on the field. He's going to fight. I think that's also what kind of went into this pick. For his weaknesses, though, loses outside leverage too easily when drifting toward the hash, more of a route guarder than a playmaker, and needs to attack and free himself from perimeter blocks earlier. And then also did not display good speed at Pro Day. That, that's something I'm not going to read super into. I do that with kind of every prospect. I kind of wait to see that a bit more on the field. I understand why that's important and why it affects draft position, but I'm not going to use that as an example and say, hey, this guy is really not going to, he's really going to struggle with this because, I'm going to let that, I'm going to wait to see that on the field first. I'm not going to kind of let that weigh into this too much. But yeah, needs to attack and free himself from perimeter blocks earlier. That's something that, needs to be worked on. And his weaknesses, I think as a whole, can be worked on to that for like a lot of guys, but I do believe that. I think with the right coaching, right development, it helps out prospects a lot. And I think we've seen when it doesn't, it, is not career ending, but it really kind of stifles what could have been a good career for a lot of players. But Kamari Lassiter, I think, is a great player. I think he fell a little bit, and I think he went to the perfect spot for him. Looking at this Texans defense, I mean, it is really, really good. You get Will Anderson last year. He had a very solid rookie year. Now you also bring in Danielle Hunter from the Vikings, who's obviously an excellent player as well. Derek Stingley Jr., I think, took a step in year 2, which I actually kind of expected. I did a video on him last year. He was in I think he was in like a breakout player video I did. Jeff Okudah, I honestly am not sure how great he did at this kind of fresh start for him, but, you know, I do hope he did well. I will say that Kamari Lassiter being right behind him, I think he can definitely take over that quarterback number 2 spot. But I do hope Jeff Okudah can pan out because he's had a rough start to his career. Jalen Petrie is a great player, though. I like him a lot. He's improved a lot since his time in the NFL, too. So it's a Texans defense that is really good. I think they have a very well-rounded offense and defense. This is, in my opinion, a Super Bowl level roster, assuming CJ Stroud can play at the level he's already played at last year. But yeah, Lassiter, I think, has a spot in this defense. I think people might be surprised with how much he plays just because of the guys ahead of him are really good in their own right. But this is someone that, like we saw, he's wired correctly for the run stopping. I think he's not just going to be relied on to, you know, put on great receivers. I think he can blitz if needed. I think they can get really creative with him because of what he's willing to do to help the team out and because he's just kind of aggressive. He's a D'Amico Ryans guy, in my opinion. Some guys I think you can just tell, just like, you know, Dan Campbell drafting people like, oh my gosh, what's his name? The linebacker they got. I can't remember what his name is now. Jack Campbell. Like, you can just tell sometimes that, like, yeah, that's a really good fit. And I think Kamari Lassiter is a really good fit here in Houston. But all in all, though, that is it for this video. If you guys want to see me do this again with players from later rounds or maybe just more round 1 guys that are being slept on, round 2, 3, a lot of 2s here, so probably not as many round 2 guys in the next video if you guys do want to see that. If you did enjoy the video, though, be sure to subscribe to my channel on the road to 1,000 subscribers. So thank you guys for all the support on that. I do really appreciate it. Yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.